Welcome to the podcast Komodo. My name is Christina Petersen, and this is again a conversation with a very friendly and inspiring colleague of mine, and his name is Ed Woodall. And I think he is much more familiar with talking to an audience and to engaging people than I. And so I give it up to him to tell a little bit about him, or yes, Ed, hello.
Okay, hello. Thanks very much. Goodness, where to start? Well,
maybe we can start with it. That where are you at the moment?
Where am I? I am in the UK. I am English, and I've always lived in the UK. I studied for a couple of years in Paris, and I've lived in London for a lot of my life, and I'm now in Oxford. In fact, I'm not even in Oxford. I'm near Oxford. So I went from London, which is a huge city, to Oxford, which is quite a big city, and now I'm in well, it's almost a village. It's halfway between a village and a town called Charlbury. And we don't have a name for this. I'm sure that you Germans would have a name for something that's not quite a town, but not quite a village. But we don't have a name for it.
Oh.
You have one of your lovely compound nouns for something that's halfway between a town and a village?
Oh, I never thought about it. No, it's a village, or it's a town, or it's a little town, or a big village. So we can combine things so lovely to be more clear in what we have. But actually we put two meanings together and form a new word out of it. That's maybe you're familiar with this, that we can build such long words about something, but it's only like a row of words. Okay, but we are not here to discuss our languages. No, we have something to talk about, and that's Feldenkrais. And where did you first discover Feldenkrais?
I first discovered, partly to answer the first question, really, well, the one before the first question, is that I come from the theatre. So, like a lot of UK Feldenkrais practitioners, I discovered Feldenkrais in actually a clowning workshop. So what I did in my early 20s was to go and train with a guy called Jaques Lecoq in Paris because I wanted to be a clown. I kind of wanted to be an actor, actually, but I thought this would be an interesting version of training in the theatre, which would be to go and train at this wonderful physical theatre school, which puts movement before text. So it wasn't about learning how to do plays, it was more about learning how to sense your embodied world. So using movement and the body as the place to start the creative act. But before I went there, I did a few workshops with the sort of people who trained at that school. And I was in Manchester in the north of England, and I've just finished my degree. So I did a degree in English language and literature. And I did a week with a whole series of different practitioners from the theatre, clowns, circus, all this kind of stuff. And one of them came in and he asked us to lie on the floor, which I thought was a bit funny thing to do. And then he asked us to move, so we had to spread our arms out, and then we had to move one hand across our chest over to the other side. And it took ages. And I had no idea why we were doing it, what we were doing, but I absolutely loved it. There was something kind of, I'd never done anything like it before. I'd done sport, I'd done gymnastics, I'd done acting, I'd done academics, obviously. I'd done all this, and there was something kind of extraordinary about a grown man asking me, nearly a grown man, to lie down on the floor and sort of move my hand across my chest over to the other side very slowly. And I didn't know it was Feldenkrais at that point, because a lot of these guys were taught by someone called Monica Pagnot, who was an amazing movement teacher who worked with Jaques Lecoq, and then a teacher called Philippe Gaulier, really famous clown teacher. And she had studied with Feldenkrais, because every summer in the 1970s, Feldenkrais would go to Paris to work with Peter Brook, a very well-known theatre director, who left the UK in the early 70s and set up an incredible international theatre group at the Bouffe du Nord in Paris. And he invited Feldenkrais every summer to come over and teach his actors. And in fact, there are recordings of these. So somewhere in the Feldenkrais, Federation or whatever it is, that there are these recordings. So I'd love to hear some of that work. And Monica attended these workshops, and because she was so bright, so talented, without training as a Feldenkrais practitioner, she clearly understood the work very well, and then started to teach it to other people. Now, I don't think she always named her sources, which we could sort of debate a little bit. Did she say it was Feldenkrais method? Certainly when I got to the Lecoq school, that was another time when again I kind of discovered Feldenkrais, but didn't discover Feldenkrais because no one said it was Feldenkrais. So I was in the first year of the training, and again we got a mat, we lay down on the floor, and then someone said, put your arm out towards the ceiling and then move your hand towards the ceiling. And then you put your leg up and then you pressed down and your pelvis came up and your arm came up at the same time. And I just thought, whatever this is amazing. And I don't know why it's amazing. But that was another moment etched in my memory, and I was about 22 when that happened. And again, maybe it's just why any of us like Feldenkrais method is because it takes you into a space where you can slow down, you can feel things that you don't normally feel. Your whole time space, your whole relationship to time and space changes when you're in an awareness through movement lesson. And I think, well, I can't speak for other people really, but I know that I have a thirst to put my brain in a different gear, and that I'm sure somehow instinctively I understand that the more I can shunt myself into some sort of different alternative reality, which I believe an awareness through movement lesson and an FI, a functional integration, gets you into, it radically shifts your relationship to normal space-time. And it's in that time and in that space that your brain can start to do things that it wouldn't normally do. And I didn't know that when I was 22, 23. I just thought, whoa, this is cool. I really like this. Or maybe it was another reason sometimes people like Feldenkrais is because it's a bit of time off.
Yes.
When you're doing something and, oh my God, I've got to do something, or you're playing tennis and the tennis teacher wants you to hit the ball a lot, or when you're in an acting class, you've got to improvise. It's like, oh God, maybe I won't be able to improvise well. And then someone comes along who seems to know what they're talking about. So Feldenkrais practitioners have this air of knowing something. Now, whether they do or not, I don't know, but the method seems to invite other people to make it feel like you know something. Now, I think this is a really interesting area, actually. You know, what is it that we know? Some people think I'm really clever. You know, they go, wow, but people have called me wise sometimes. You know, he's really wise. I'm going, man, you don't know me. You know, you haven't seen me in normal life. I'm not wise. But maybe the method makes us seem a bit wise. But so those people who first taught me, I mean, they were simply older than me. And they said, you can lie down and not do very much for the next 20 minutes. And that, when you've been growing up and you've been going through your education and you've been trying hard and you've been trying to get good results and you've been trying to make friends and you've been trying to find out what you're supposed to do in the world, and then someone with some authority at least says, do you know what? You can have an interesting experience by just lying there or moving your toes or rolling from one side to the other. And that experience being validated by, as I say, someone who was more experienced than me must have been very powerful. I haven't really thought about it in this way before. It's a good job I hadn't come and talk to you. Yeah. I might understand the method a bit more by the end of this.
Yeah, and that's the crazy thing. Since I do this podcast, it's so interesting which insight I can get by talking to all my colleagues.
Yeah.
And what I hear in your talk is that you also were at the beginning of your 20s like me. I was just, I think, 25 or 20, so like this, when I met the method. No, 24. It's okay. I was roundabout by age like you. And sometimes I'm wondering about that. A lot of people are coming to Feldenkrais classes when they are older, because what you say to me was speaking to me as well. When I lie down, it was like, oh, I can do it in my own time. Because when you are young, you have to go to school, you have to do this. I was in my music study, everyone wanted from me something else, and this all. And so I was so glad to be in a class without I have to do something, or I have to be like something, or I have to approach something. I lie down and I found out about my potential. And after that, I went to each class, and in every stage, in every class, I was better. If it was music theory, or it was like conducting or playing the piano.
It was that obvious to you. It was the connection between being better at something. You see, that's really interesting for me, because I've spent years teaching acting and then being a Feldenkrais practitioner, whether a trained one or not, but obviously in latter years being trained. And I still haven't worked it out, or even perhaps even directly felt it, although I know it to be true, that how Feldenkrais makes me better at the thing that I mean, okay, I knew that it was making me a better teacher, actually. And maybe by the time I really got into Feldenkrais, I wasn't acting anymore. So our listeners might want to know, I suppose, in the interim. So I discovered Feldenkrais, and I knew. So what happened is I joined a theatre company called Complitcité, Theatre de Complitcité, a really very well known, massively successful physical theatre company, and I was lucky enough to join them to do one of their plays. And we had in the cast, we had a guy called Jos Hauben, And Jos was from Belgium, from the lowlands, and he was very intelligent. He spoke about 7 languages. He was very funny, and he was also on a Feldenkrais training. So he started to give us in the morning before our lesson, before our rehearsals. Occasionally, we'd have a Feldenkrais lesson, and we'd lie on a pole, and we'd do these rolling around things. And he also gave us little lessons outside of rehearsal. So I was given quite a sort of sharp dose of Feldenkrais method when we were doing these rehearsals. Now, unlike you with your music, I'm not sure that I could tell you directly, oh goodness me, doing Feldenkrais lessons made me better when I got back into a rehearsal room. I can't say that is true for me, or I can't remember it being so. I just remember loving the Feldenkrais lessons themselves. And I think this is an interesting distinction as to how, because so often in a world which is built on achievements, results, this, that, and the other, often I think we try and tell people that Feldenkrais is good for this, is good for that, is good for the other. It'll make you hurt less. It will make you more intelligent. It will make you happy, all sorts of things, which I believe it does. But I also miss, to a certain extent, the idea that it's just a fun thing to do. I have a German student. She's a professor. She's a history professor. You'll like this story. And I used to teach her in real space in Oxford. Now she's back in Germany, and I teach her on Zoom. So she's a loyal student. Sometimes I say in a lesson, in an awareness through movement lesson, I talk about improvement. All of us Feldenkrais practitioners at some point talk about improving, because that's part of the method. You do the movements to improve a function, or you do the movements to improve your connection between your brain and your body, or whatever. At some point, it's got to be about improving. And this, and my friend Christina, who's another Christina, said, Ed, I don't want to improve. I just enjoy doing the movements. I just thought it was a really smart thing to say. It's not about her coming to a lesson and going, oh goodness me, I'm going to be a better history professor, or I'm going to be able to play tennis better. She likes coming to the lessons because the lessons themselves are fun. And I think it's an important thing to remember, that it doesn't necessarily have to be for something. It can just be for itself.
And I like this, that you point this out so clear, that there is something, I do this because it's fun. So I like to play around with movement. And it is something, yes, it's also so interesting to lie down and to go back to a stage like a child, to investigate the possibilities of movement, of what I can do. And that was really something what caught me also, that I don't have to repeat something to improve, or to go deeper, or to be so concentrated and so serious about something. I could lie there even when I decide, oh, okay, I hear just a bit, or I have a little nap, like pausing, but the lesson will going on. And at the end, I have more the feeling of being, yes, what I like after Feldenkrais lessons for myself, that I feel with more, potential. Or that I have the idea, the world is like now, I go into a Feldenkrais lesson, and it's the world is like also stable. It's like this. And after that, maybe that there is something else, and it can change so fast. And that reminds me also to move on. But to give an explanation why it was so important to do for me, to do Feldenkrais, really in this age, on the situation where I was I think mainly when I do Feldenkrais, it's more quieting my nervous system. And this brings you into a position of enjoying yourself more. It's like, well, the outside isn't so loud at the moment. And this makes you also more concentrated in certain situations.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely, because I mean, I had a funny situation in that I learnt a little bit with Joss, and then the big breakthrough was doing a week. So I was probably 26, and I did a week with Garet Newall, who at the time was one of the only practitioners in the UK. And yeah, a week of lying on the floor, rolling around, hearing a bit about Moshe, watching maybe a video, and just doing lots of awareness through movement. And again, I can't tell you why. I can't really tell you. Well, I didn't have a kind of linear or causal need to do it. I didn't go, I've got to do this so that I'm going to be able to do that better. I think it was I just knew that if I did it, I'd know more. Know more about what it is to be a human being. That's what I really felt. That's what the lessons brought to me, was that, oh my God, if you don't get aware, then it's a bit like everyone else is walking around going, come on, wake up, you don't know anything. You don't know what it's like to be a human being unless you do this stuff, because this stuff's amazing. It through these minimal means, these small movements, you get this massive boost of at least perceived intelligence, physical embodied intelligence about the simple business of being alive. And that's, I suppose, again, I haven't quite articulated it like this before, but that must have been what it was, because I didn't have any good reason to do it. I just knew I had to do it. And it just must be because I just felt more alive after I'd done it. And I must have put two and two together. Well, if I'm more alive, I'm going to be better at acting, directing, teaching, and all the things that I do. But the thing...
So I'm thinking about sometimes it's also to what you say, it's everything, like human, and maybe then you can be better. But I think it gave me also each time the idea that I decide in this moment what I will to do. When we are in a line with what we are doing, and there's no virus who is throwing us out of our usual behavior, then it was for me a moment where I can go into myself and finding the new possibility. And maybe I move on in the direction what I'm doing, and in another way, or with a wider space of view of everything. And on the other hand, maybe I can feel in this moment where I am, it's okay, but maybe I have to change into another direction. That's also for me something what I find out with the Feldenkrais method, because it's a bit going into quietness and looking what else is possible. It also shows me at the end sometimes other ways, other aims maybe I can looking for, or what I want to achieve in my life. I don't know. It sounds so great, but really for me it's an into conversation without words. Because it's not thinking in the plane of words, or I'm not looking like, is this right or that right? There you have the positive side, the negative side, but I lie down, I come to the ground, I feel my basic, and then I stand up, and I know one day, 1 hour or 2 or 3 weeks later, I will find a different way of moving. And I had times in my life where I was not so much into practicing for myself the Feldenkrais method, and I know I was a little bit in these times, I know I was stuck also in my personal life.
Really interesting. Can I ask, so I'm assuming that you came across it at your music training, is that right? You had lessons alongside your piano and conducting?
So I did it by myself. It was not given by the university, but it was so that I went by myself. So yes, the music training is a little bit kind of different than for actors. I think that's it's more like the old stuff, training, looking.
Well, except in the States, for instance, I mean, nearly every music conservatoire has a Feldenkrais practitioner now. I believe it's pretty widespread.
Yes. So it was not so common, or it's more like looking what this, it's this esoteric or like this. But that's also a thing. I do this podcast to bring more the insights in the Feldenkrais method. That's not, there is some basic behind it.
Well, it's quite nice to be talking to somebody about Feldenkrais method and not having to push it, tell you or anybody who's listening that they're going to feel this, that, or the other. It's just it's an amazing portal through to a bigger life. That's what I've felt. But I just want to ask you, so if we discovered it at about the same age, in our mid-20s, did you then practice quite regularly? Did you go to a class on a regular basis?
Yes. But very soon I went into my own training.
Oh, you did? So you got going quite early, right?
Yes, quite early. So, and also I found out that I was pregnant with the third child. So, about this quieting down into Feldenkrais lessons was quite important for me. Wow. To have my space and there to lie down.
And you kept it going all through bringing up three small children?
Yes.
That's pretty good. That's good discipline.
Yes, of course. And also I have to say, family background supporting. It wasn't easy each time, but it was maybe obvious for everyone that that's what I want to do and I have to do. And it's good she is going. And there was a supporting environment. Thank you for this.
You see, the funny thing for me is that having been convinced at that point in my mid-20s, I knew I was going to train. I made a decision there and then. So in a way that you made the decision, I also made the decision, but I then didn't train for another 15 years.
But
it took me 15 years to actually get to the point where I trained. And in that 15 years, what's peculiar is that I never had a one-to-one, and I didn't really go to any awareness through movement classes. But I had it in so what those early experiences gave me was an attitude. And it was particularly that attitude in relation to effort, about watching other people, what kind of effort were they putting into their work, their life, I don't know, but just that it was a kind of, once you've experienced it, or this was how it felt to me, once I'd experienced that life isn't all about pushing, that it's about, tactics, it's about awareness, it's about subtlety, it's about negotiation, it's about, all these things that I felt that the Feldenkrais method had opened my body and my mind to, it was as if I was never going to be the same again. So I held on to an attitude, and also because I had quite a bad back, so on the kind of pain side of things, I'm pretty sure that I maintained an ability to keep myself out of really bad pain. For about 10, 15 years. It deteriorated in my 40s, which coincided with when I actually went on the training. But even when I got to the training, I didn't think that the training was going to particularly solve any of the pain problems I had. But I'm slightly just going all over the place now. I was just interested. It just always strikes. Yeah, it just took me a long time. I had a career, I had children, and I didn't have a huge amount of money. So it was just difficult to find the time, the right time to train. And in some ways I'm regretful. I go, oh God, if I...
Oh, no, I think it's really good that what you said, if you ever had contact with the method and it spoke to you in this moment, that you keep it with you. That's really amazing with all the talks I had, that there are some people who maybe read only the books and they work by themselves about it, or whatever they could read about, like neuroscience and everything. They moved around with this idea and maybe went to a training 20 years after this, or 15 years after this, or they tried other things and were combining this with what they read. And also, actually, I have at the moment a client. She was working by herself a lot with the Feldenkrais method. So she had a stroke, she is paralyzed on one side, and this all. It was amazing. She came with me on this side, and how is this, and how, and I was like, okay. So, and it's a specialist in front of me, and that's
great. That means you've got much less work to do at the beginning. You can just get straight to it.
Yes, it's so interesting that she was working by herself so deeply with the method, but she said in one point, now she needs more help, or she wanted to be with others, and so she came to me, and we work on together. But it's really interesting how I give her something and she's working by herself. And also, I think that's something what the method can provoke in yourself, that you can work with yourself, that you can be your own teacher. Or maybe, like, her personality is like this. She wants to move on with her problems, and she wants to find out how. And she is reading, she is looking for information, and then she's working with something really, really hard job to read, what to do, what to feel, then lie down and doing this. It's amazing.
I remember trying to do it with the Awareness Through Movement book, in my 20s, and never really getting very far. So I really admire people who can do it from the book. That's fantastic. But I can't recommend it as a way of doing it.
Yes, one reason I went to the training. I was reading it and then, but now maybe it's better there's some practical help from the outside to do this. So, and I understood that you had the first little touch from Feldenkrais, what was very deep in you. And then there was something with your back and you did the training. Okay. But what changed for you during or after the training? Can you remember?
Yeah, I can. I think I became a nicer person.
Yes, really?
I think so. I became, I think I remember going into, I was very sort of self-absorbed and self-obsessed, I think, at the beginning of the training. Very wound up in my own, I mean, that's partly through being in chronic pain. I also have severe osteoarthritis in my feet. So walking is difficult, running is almost impossible, you know, and I had that, and I had my bad back, but I'm a movement practitioner, so it's all a bit weird, you know. I've been putting myself through things which exacerbate the pain. And I was very, sort of wrapped up in myself. I thought I was very clever, really interesting. And gradually, as the training went on, I realized that it wasn't all about me. That life wasn't all about me. And teaching wasn't all about me. That was I think I have been a teacher, really, even though I had, you know, some success as an actor and did some big movies and so forth. I think fundamentally, I've always been a teacher, really, from the moment I came back from Lecoq. But I used to think that being kind of energetic and being interesting, or thinking I was being interesting myself, was a good way to teach. Like, people would sort of go, "Oh God, he's interesting," and learn something. And I couldn't see or feel how misguided that was. So one of the things that I discovered in the training was how to, it's going to sound really simple now, but calm down.
Yeah.
You mentioned it earlier, you know, it calms, well, before we came on air, it calms your nervous system. And once your nervous system starts to calm down, then you have more time to consider yourself and the other people in the room. But more as I started to learn how to teach awareness through movement lessons, was to take myself out of the equation, or at least try to. You know, this thing of trying to deliver as neutrally as possible, as clearly, as calmly as possible, so that people can hear what you're saying, so that people's bodies can respond at a suitable frequency to what is being suggested to them. I had to get rid of all the crap. I'm still known to tell the odd joke in a lesson. I'm wont to want to make people smile. But my life doesn't depend on it anymore. So I've sort of realized that actually genuinely letting other people experience something is what I'm there to do. Not to go into a room or be with somebody's body and do a lot of experiencing myself and hope that somehow they get some benefit from it.
That's interesting to say that you, yes. But on the other hand, when we are talking about functional integration, so the hands-on work, we talk in the training a lot about that's more about you than about the person on the table, that you have
Sure.
to feel yourself. But sometimes there is ourselves too much in the way to feel the other people. Yeah, that's
my goodness. I mean, I had to do, so it took me 6 years to do my training because I was working quite hard as a teacher in a drama school. I couldn't always get to the training, so it took me a couple more years. And I'd done my functional integration practicum. I'd done it at the end in my fourth year, and I passed. I did it. Jeremy Krause watched me. It was a pretty good FI. I did fine. Anyway, I carried on training for another 2 years, and by the time I got to the 6th year, it was a very hot summer. And Garet Newall, my trainer, my educational director, still said to me, Ed, would you like to do your practicum again? So, which for those who don't really understand is like, that's having to take your, sit your exams again. It's like, that's having to go through a test once more. And no one really wants to go through a test. But of course I smiled and went, love to, yeah, great. So I couldn't get out of it. And because I was 2 years ahead of quite a lot of the people in the training, I sort of thought I had to be better than the other people in the, I thought I had to sort of, be really good. And so not only did I try and, I tried to do about 3 times the amount of material that you might do in a one-to-one with somebody in my second practicum. Not only did I try and do way too much, I also genuinely tried to sort of help this person feel better. Again, for those who don't understand this method deeply, that might not make so much sense, but we're not there to make somebody feel anything. We're there to support them, help them feel themselves and allow their nervous system to heal themselves. But when you don't understand that, and I still don't fully understand it, I'm working through it, I'm working towards it, I get a little bit better, hopefully, every week, every month, every year. But it was a very hot day as well, and I have a habit of wearing slightly too many clothes. It's something that people who know me know that I do. I just don't like really sort of, I finally usually get my summer clothes on by about August or the end of August, and then it's almost time to kind of put them back again. Anyway, it was in August and I was wearing still heavy clothes. So not only was I trying way too hard to show how good I was also trying to help this woman feel better. I was also wearing too many clothes. So I was sweating, I was dripping. And every time I touched this woman, I had to step back and get a towel and sort of wipe myself off and then get back to it. But, I got to the end of the session, and this woman sat up and she stood up and she said, I feel much better. And, it was a nice experience. So I thought, phew, I've done well. And we got in a circle, so all the other people who watched you do your practicum and Garet were in a circle. And I thought, well, this is going to be quite good. They're going to say how well I do. They had these sort of dead faces. All of them had this sort of kind of slightly kind of bemused expression on their face, as if to say, what were you doing? And I mean, when it got to Garet, and Garet and I have a very good relationship. I'm now on the training as an experienced practitioner. I go and teach FI to the students, and we go back a long way because I met her in my mid-20s. It was the only time when I've ever known her actually be angry with me. She was angry. She was angry and disappointed, as if to say, have you not learned anything? I don't quite know where that started. So I find it very difficult, or I find it one of the great joys of learning the method and being a practitioner, is how to be with somebody else and take myself somewhat out of the picture, or be a support, be a sounding board for them. So that is what I learned very sincerely through the method. And outside of that, I've also become better at listening. I've become calmer. And as soon as you do that, or as soon as I've done that, life's become much better. Because I'm not in such a kind of a sort of pent up egotistical mania so much of the time. It's a long way to go, but it's certainly improved me, I think.
Yes, I would like to sit here until tomorrow to hear your thinking about your work and what you want to do. But now I'm asking myself, so I'm convinced about the Feldenkrais method. You caught me right at the beginning, like, wow, maybe in the future we will meet and I will have an FI or come to your classes. So, but what sort of people do you think you want to attract, or who is in the right place with you?
Oh, such a, yeah. It's an interesting question, because the thing about, and you know this, every Feldenkrais practitioner knows this, is that we all know that everybody can benefit from the Feldenkrais method. We know that. And that is one of our great strengths, and it's also one of our great problems, because you know that you've got something of a golden egg. You've been given the prize, having been through the training, or even if you've a keen follower of the method. I know people who are doing it in their 70s and their 80s and have been doing it for years, and they love it, they swear by it, and they've also got something of a golden egg. But those of us who have to then teach it, deliver it to other people, have this awful conundrum in a way of going, well, how am I supposed to choose? Who am I supposed to, who do I appeal to? Because I know that I can appeal to a vast array of people. So I've tried this and I've tried that, and I've looked into working with people more with strokes. I've looking to work with children with special needs. I've looked into all sorts of areas, but none of them quite suit or fit me, because they're not really part of my world. So I suppose at the end of the day, I find myself attracted to, and they find themselves attracted to me, people who want to go through some sort of transformation. People with often a kind of creativity, whether it's latent or whether it's overt. People who can cope with a little bit of non-instruction. So I'm looking for people who sort of know that they're done with people telling them what to do, that they need to find a way of empowering themselves. And again, that might sound very vague, and maybe it is, and maybe that's why it's hard to find one's tribe to really reach out and get people into this method, because it is a bit mysterious, I think, for some people. So that's one area of it. But then there's a much more pragmatic side, because I love doing, I mean, some Feldenkrais practitioners don't do both ATM and FI. I cannot conceive of a situation like that. I have to do both. It doesn't make any sense otherwise to me. And so what I'm looking for people who are in pain, who want to be in less pain. And now I'm looking for people particularly who've got pain around their shoulder girdle, in order to be in less pain. And also what I've developed is a way of helping them remotely. So this is what's exciting, and this is what's happened since COVID, is that I've developed something which is between awareness through movement and FI, which hands over completely the hands-on control to the student. So partly the people I'm looking for are the people inevitably, like the rest of us, whose knees hurt, ankles hurt, neck hurt, shoulders hurt, because because we offer, or I offer, a way of living with and moving beyond those chronic pain conditions in a way that is empowering, in a way that hands over, as I say, the tools for self-care. And this is what I think is really, one of the things I think is really exciting about this period. In fact, I was doing this before what we call lockdown. Because I still have a bit of a niggle in my right shoulder. When I went to my Feldenkrais training, I couldn't even lift my arm up, got to about there. And by the end of the training, it's fine, it's now fine. But it's still got a little, I threw myself down a hillside in my mid-20s. I mean, I shouldn't have done it. It was a mistake. And so inevitably, I got a nasty injury here. And I've still got a little niggle in that. So I've, been trying to figure out, well, how do I get out of pain when it gets into pain? And how do I maintain what I would call shoulder health in an ongoing way? And I suddenly thought, oh, that's right. Now I went to my teacher. So I have a great teacher, Brenny Booth, who lives in Oxford. And I go to her for FI. And she's quite strict, a little bit fierce. Some people think she's a bit fierce. She's Swiss. And she said to me, we must not forget our job is not to help people feel better. Our job is to help people understand how to help themselves to feel better. And it really struck me, because I'm sure, like all of us, occasionally we can get involved in a one-to-one hands-on, and we're doing nice things to this other person. And that's good. And that may be all they need, is for someone to be kind to them through touch. They get up. But it can be quite seductive, both to the person who's having it done to them and also to the practitioner. Oh, I'm doing something nice to this person. This person will thank me because my touch is kind and making them feel better. And I think that's a problem, or it's a problem for me. I don't want to be seduced by that kind of power that you might feel that you've got through your, people say, oh, Ed, you've got healing hands. Well, no, I'm just trained to get you to feel things differently. That's why it feels like they're healing hands, because you haven't experienced much like this before in your life. So with my teacher's words in my ear, I suddenly thought, okay, I'm going to get people, and I'm going to start here because this is an area of interest to me, and I'm going to figure out what do I do? How can I literally figure out, with using both of my hands, using my spine, using my ribs, understanding flexion and extension, side bending, rotation, how can I, literally sitting in a chair, make sure that this gets better and stays better? And then I started doing it with other people. Even before lockdown, I said, okay, I'm not going to touch you. You're going to have 5 sessions with me if you've got some shoulder issues, and I'm not going to touch you. You're going to do all the touching. And they got to the end of it and said, well, my God, that's incredible. Well, no, some people did 2 sessions or whatever it was and said, Ed, that's amazing. That's so much better. I'm like, okay, so I'm onto something here. And I was very excited. And I still am excited, actually. I think I've still got this sort of, feels like I've got this gift to give to people. Well, they have to pay for it, actually, because that's how it works, because we have to make a living. But this ability to help people help themselves is, I think, one of the great discoveries from this period, is that because I'm working, I was working with someone in the Philippines on her shoulders, and she's feeling much, much, much better now. But she's done all the work herself, and she can go back to it. She doesn't have to come to me to go, oh, Ed, can you touch me? So no, I don't need to, because you've reached a level of sophistication in your own sense of yourself. So there we go. That's that's the nature of the business. I want to work with everybody, but I also am quite specific at the moment about wanting to work with people who want to solve issues to do with their pain around the shoulders.
Yes, so that's really interesting. I think that's a good possibility to work with someone that you give them the possibility to have some ideas how they can move themselves and to do things, and you have your own hands on, because that's also another possibility to have an answer. Oh, sorry, my German is spinning into my mind. It would be so easy in German. Okay, but you have the floor and you have the shoulder and you have your hand, and the hand is also talking to you, and not only the hand, because you have the transmission throughout this. And what I saw, what you brought into it, that I, as a Feldenkrais practitioner by myself, understood exactly immediately what you are teaching, and that's amazing that you brought it into into a row or something what you can give someone without a training.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the important thing, that someone has some tools what he can do by himself without doing a whole training.
But that's really interesting as well. Is sorry to interrupt. Is working with people with different levels of experience. So, and it hasn't. I thought it would be. I'm only going to be able to do this stuff really well once I've taught people, quite a lot of awareness through movement or whatever it is. But actually, I've done it with people with almost no experience, and it's worked. And I've done it with people with more experience, and it hasn't even worked quite so well. I mean, it's been in terms of actual pain relief and more function. Yeah. So I think it's a fascinating possibility, and I have to work quite hard at it. I have to, like I'm sure you understand. You've got to, in order to be able to talk someone through these very subtle things, is amazing. And you know what? And the people I've done it with, they're all brilliant at it. I keep thinking they might just sit there and go, I suppose I'll do it if he said. But no, they get, they get into a real sort of. I do it sitting up. Unless they're really I've had one or two people who've been in so much pain they haven't been able to do it sat up in a chair. So I said, great, lie on the floor, and we'll do it on the floor. But actually, on the whole, with what I call the shoulder protocol, I do it sitting in a chair. So I've got a really good view of them, and they've got quite a good view of me if they want to watch me. Because a bit like FI, a bit like hands-on, one-to-one, more than in an awareness through movement lesson, I really go through quite a lot of the moves that I'm suggesting to that person, not trying to demonstrate it, but just sort of, I might as well do it while I'm here, because I can always improve my own connections to myself. So, but what I find beautiful is that people really allow themselves to be taken into a zone where they can feel themselves. And of course, that's my Feldenkrais bench that my laptop's on. Of course, when you ask people to lie down, they get lulled into a place of receptiveness. And so having to get them into that place of receptiveness whilst they're sat up and their cognitive functions are fully, working is an interesting trick, if you like, how to induce this kind of curious, open, sensitive touch in people who are not trained to do it. And I don't know about you, but I found working. I mean, I do these things on Facebook as well, where I teach without being able to see anyone. I just kind of just launch these lessons out into the ether, and just mini lessons. But they've been so good for me, because I've got to think harder. I've got to imagine more, because, in a lesson, you can see someone, you go, oh, all right, they need to move the shoulder a bit more there. But when you can't see anyone, you're going to go, oh, I wonder what they might be doing. Oh, they might be doing this. I better say that. So I think it's been a real a boost in my own practice to have to teach people who I can't see, and then also teach one-to-one people I can see but I can't touch. So all these, as you were saying just before we started, these adaptations. Okay, I think a lot of what's going on in the world now is absolutely awful, and I hate it, and I'm miserable about a lot of it. But we adapt, and it has been a great gift to have to literally, cognitively or cerebrally or brain wise, to have to make these shifts into these new media, but also new relations with people, has been, for me, a great treat.
Oh, you open up such a big door, and it's so interesting to think in this way. But I think we have to come to an end. I could talk with you. Yes, I said it before, until I don't know when we can fly to the moon and we can talk on.
Another one in a few months. Maybe we come together and see how things are going in a few months.
But one last thought is circling around in my mind, that you said something about people with some shoulder things are going on, and they want to improve, maybe, or get rid of pain. So there's something they want to achieve with this. But there's so I gave an FI a lesson, a hands-on lesson this afternoon, and this client has so much trouble with her feet, ankles, knees, and she said, my hip joints, and of course something here, it's the neck is a little bit so icky.
Right.
But what you did the last time, what we were discovering here, possibilities to move, and this all made my feet so much better, and my knees are so aligned, and that's easier. It's not gone, but she was so happy, and she sat there and she said, you can do the last thing again. So what I want to say to all the listeners here, that even when you may have something with your feet, knees, ankles, hip joints, what else more below your shoulder girdle, maybe also it's good to go to Ed. If you think, yes, I maybe there's also something. And also I know when you have like an issue in a certain place in yourself where you feel it's not going so round, and it could be what else, there's always like a twin or a mirror place which is showing you this. So it's never ever only one area.
Of course.
So that to say, maybe that's for a next conversation, to bring this more to the surface. What does it mean, or why you know this and I know this, and I can recommend this to all people, to start really at a certain place and to go into this work, because there is something what is interesting for you. But maybe it could be interesting to start also with this area, but there is something with your feet, only as something to chew on it.
I know we're trying to wrap it up, but I mean, interestingly, over the past a couple of weeks working with people in this way, I have also started to remind myself that when I'm working with someone's shoulder girdle, to return to the feet more often and to return to their sit bones more often. So to re-ground that person to feel the whole system a bit more. I mean, already it works, obviously, with the spine and the ribs and the neck, but actually going a little bit further away, right down to the feet, I'm already incorporating. So yeah, and look, yeah. I like talking. People who know me know that I like talking, and sometimes people have said I might even talk too much. So I know that sometimes I just have to.
So do I. It's perfect for me that you like to talk so much that I little shut up. So it's okay. But here at the end, is there something what you want to say, to send out at the end? It's up to you to bring the last words on air.
Oh my God. Well, I don't really know, really, except, I mean, wherever you are, find out who your local practitioner is. I mean, many people will be practitioners and body workers and listening to this. Am I right? I'm not quite sure exactly who's listening. But of course, I would say just try and find a local practitioner. And of course now, I mean, one of the interesting things is that, of course, none of us needs to be local anymore. We might not be able to deliver exactly the same product or process or practice that we used to do when we were more regularly touching people and hearing their breath in the room. But the online version, especially I think for awareness through movement, is a very good alternative. And I had a student in a lesson this morning say to me, who's been an FI client for years, a one-to-one hands-on client for years, but she didn't used to come to the awareness through movement lessons, and now she does. And I was talking after the lesson. I said, why didn't you come before? She said, oh, I knew if I came, I'd try and get competitive with people. She says, now I'm just doing it in my house. I can't compare myself to anybody. I don't have to look at anybody on the screen, and I can just do my own thing. So there's something very, very nourishing about being able to do this practice at home, which is about bringing yourself to your own home, which is, of course, the body that you live in and the mind that lives in that body, and those two things are the same. So I would say, yeah, come and be at home. At home.
Yes, that's
my final word.
Yes, and that's really interesting to talk with you, to you. Anyway, you understand. And we end up here, and you can find on my website or on SoundCloud or wherever I will publish the links to Ed sites, and also Ed will do something on his website, I think, to put
I could do a little offer. I mean, I could do a thing where if people want to experience the a tiny bit of what I call the shoulder protocol. Anyone with any niggles in this area, shoulder blade issues, rotator cuff problems, then if you've come through having listened to this, then I'll do 20 minutes with you or something. So I could make a little offer for people to do a little bit of that experience for free.
What a nice offer.
Yeah, no more than 20 minutes, just to give you an inkling as to what it's like.
Yeah. Or they can find you on Facebook at Woodall.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can join my Facebook group called Isolation Consolation, which where I deliver a short Feldenkrais lesson every weekday morning British summertime. And that's really nice, you know, and they stay on there for 3 weeks as well. So you can just go to the page and dip into lessons from last week or, you know, the week before. And it's a nice little community. It's starting to be a thriving. There's a huge group. There's 1,800 people in the group. Not that many are super active, but there's probably, I don't know, about 200, 300 people who are sort of, you know, there and thereabouts and contributing. And I have a guest every week, so I do a little bit of this kind of thing, although much shorter. I just talk to somebody for 15 minutes and then hand it over to them, and they do a sort of an experience live. So on Wednesday, for instance, we've got someone, a therapist, and she's going to do an experience of something called the listening space, which is based on something called clean language, which comes out of neuro-linguistic programming. You know, so it's, yeah, that's something people can do, is come and experience short, daily, free at source lessons. So there is a mechanism to, you know, to pay for it, because it takes up quite a lot of my time now. But I think if people are enjoying it and it's doing them some good, then I'm sure they're willing to, you know, shell out a little bit. So there's two things, yeah. And yeah, anybody who's in that group, actually anyone who's in the group gets what I'm calling, I've just coined a new expression for it, an isolation consultation. Isolation consultation, which is 15 minutes with me on a Zoom, free, to find out what the group does, what Feldenkrais is, how it can apply to you, whoever you are, and whether there's something we can do one-to-one. So there's some things. I'm out there, you know, from someone who hardly had a practice at all before the pandemic. You know, a very local practice with a few clients and a few students. I now find myself in this extraordinary position of having what you might call global reach. You know, I'm working with people on you know, all around the world. I mean, you know, it is extraordinary. It is absolutely extraordinary. A bit bewildering at times, a bit overwhelming at times, but very exciting. And, you know, meeting people like you. It's delightful.
Yes. So
thank you very much for inviting me, by the way. I haven't said thank you. So thank you very much.
Thank you that you are a guest and you're spending your time with me. Then I'm very grateful for this. And yes, for everyone who likes this podcast and who went through all the time with us here, this might be interested in other conversations. There are plenty of English conversations, and when you go on iTunes or Spotify and you follow this podcast, please don't be afraid. There are some in German language, there are also some in Spanish, and so that, you know, it's not one language. It's really showing the broad community of Feldenkrais practitioners. Yeah, and sometimes also I publish a lesson, but it's rare. But I also do it. It's in German.
On the podcast, via the podcast.
There's a stream. Like, if you follow this, you will get an information that there's a new recording, a new talk or something. And yes, there's sometimes, I think, a few of them are also lessons, but the most are conversation with colleagues. And at the beginning, in German with clients.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. Okay. So,
we will meet again.
Yes. But for now, I say thank you and stay healthy and be so sunny and shining all your life long. Bye.